Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Details have been released in the United States of the telephone call at the centre of moves to impeach President Trump. Democrats triggered the process by which a president can be removed from office following accusations he asked his Ukrainian counterpart to investigate a leading Democrat rival in return for hundreds of millions of dollars of US aid. Mr. Trump has denied any wrongdoing and has called the inquiry a witch hunt. Our North America editor John Sopel has the latest.
The Ukrainian president isn't normally a star of UN Week. He's not top of the bill. But Volodymyr Zelensky's conversation back in July with the world's most powerful man has put him in the spotlight, because this call could determine the fate of the US president. Donald Trump, who now faces an impeachment inquiry, the mechanism by which Congress can remove a sitting president, is emphatic. He's done nothing wrong.
It's the single greatest witch hunt in American history, probably in history, but in American history. It was going to be the call from hell. It turned out to be a nothing call, other than a lot of people said, I never knew you could be so nice.
The president wanted his Democratic challenger Joe Biden investigated, along with his son, who had business interests in Ukraine. Donald Trump, who's still in New York, has released a partial transcript of the phone conversation, and in it the US president takes the highly irregular step of asking his Ukrainian counterpart for a favour. The other thing, there's a lot of talk about Biden's son, that Biden stopped the prosecution, and a lot of people want to find out about that. So whatever you can do with the Attorney General would be great. But the Democrats say that the president seeking dirt on a domestic political rival from a foreign leader is unforgivable.
Like any mafia boss, the president didn't need to say, that's a nice country you have, it'd be a shame if something happened to it, because that was clear from the conversation.
This partial transcript is damning but not deadly. Yes, the president seeks info on a political rival from a foreign leader, but there's no quid pro quo. No, unless you give us the dirt, we won't give you aid. Nevertheless, in a divided country, buckle up for what will be a bitter and take no hostages fight. Democrats crying high crimes and misdemeanors, Republicans shouting witch hunt. John Sopel, BBC News, New York.
Now, across the Atlantic, another political crisis. Democrats in the House of Representatives have opened a formal impeachment investigation into whether President Trump put pressure on Ukraine to join an investigation into his Democratic rival, Joe Biden. President Trump has dismissed it all as a giant witch hunt, insisting there was no pressure. We're live now to our Washington correspondent, Siobhan Kennedy. Siobhan.
Well, Jackie, as much as your politics are in turmoil there, here in Washington we are witnessing extraordinary scenes. The potential impeachment of an American president is not something that politicians here take lightly, but they have decided to press ahead because they believe that there is enough evidence that Donald Trump abused his position as president for his own political gain. Now, the White House hoped that releasing that telephone call with President Zelensky of Ukraine would be enough to calm all this down. That has not worked, I should say, and there will be more evidence from the whistleblower report that kicked all this off being released later this week. As we speak, I should say, Donald Trump has met or is meeting with President Zelensky of the Ukraine at the UN in New York. The Ukraine president quipped, better to be on TV than on the phone. That's what he's just told reporters. President Trump, of course, denies any impropriety. He has spent the day dismissing all this as a Democratic witch hunt. But enough of the Democrats, Jackie, have said that they are united in this call for impeachment, and they are determined this time to press ahead.
I'm announcing the House of Representatives moving forward with an official impeachment inquiry. The president must be held accountable. No one is above the law.
As the House Speaker, Nancy Pelosi, made him the fourth US president to face a formal impeachment inquiry, Donald Trump was in Trump Tower, tweeting, "Presidential harassment." By this morning, he was back at work, attending a meeting about Venezuela in New York.
It's the single greatest witch hunt in American history, probably in history, but in American history, it's a disgraceful thing.
The Democrats have been talking impeachment for months, but they've held off because taking the plunge is a huge political risk, especially ahead of an election year, and could play straight into President Trump's familiar victim of the establishment witch hunt narrative. But allegations he'd urged a foreign leader to go after his political rival Joe Biden and withheld aid money as leverage have tipped the Democrats over the edge.
The fact is that the President of the United States, in breach of his constitutional responsibilities, has asked a foreign government to help in his political campaign at the expense of our national security. That cannot stand.
At the centre of it all, Ukraine's Volodymyr Zelensky, seen here arriving at the UN this morning, an actor who played the president on television before remarkably becoming Ukraine's actual president this year. No one can pressure me because I'm the president of an independent country. Only one person can pressure me, my 6-year-old son. 1 week after Donald Trump froze nearly $400 million in military aid to Ukraine, President Zelensky took a call from President Trump on July the 25th. That led to a whistleblower complaint against the US president. During the conversation, Donald Trump raised unproven claims that Joe Biden tried to interfere with a Ukrainian prosecutor's investigation into a gas company that his son, Hunter Biden, was on the board of. In the last few hours, the White House released what it called an unredacted transcript of that call, but which was labelled a memorandum that was not a verbatim transcript of the discussion. "I would like you to do us a favour," the president said. Then later, "There's a lot of talk about Biden's son, that Biden stopped the prosecution, and a lot of people want to find out about that, so whatever you can do with the Attorney General would be great." Biden went around bragging that he stopped the prosecution, so if you can look into it, it sounds horrible to me. The summary doesn't include President Trump explicitly promising to release aid money in return for an investigation into the Bidens.
In this transcript, there is no quid pro quo, there is no improper leverage, and the overall tone of this transcript is that it is mutually laudatory.
It's just breathtaking. The idea that anybody in this building is somehow able to rationalize this or to somehow look the other way or try to minimize it is just breathtaking.
Now the House Judiciary Committee will decide if there's enough evidence to draw up so-called articles of impeachment. Then, if a simple majority in the Democrat-controlled House voted for President Trump to be impeached, the next stage would be in the Republican-controlled Senate, where a trial would be held, presided over by the Supreme Court Chief Justice. And if 2/3 of senators acting as a jury found the president guilty, he'd be removed from office. Then say hello to President Mike Pence. Andrew Johnson was the first US president to be impeached in 1868, but the Senate didn't convict him.
Clinton is impeached for high crimes.
It was the same
and
for Bill
misdemeanors.
Clinton in 1998, impeached by the House but acquitted by the Senate, and Richard Nixon resigned before it got that far. Removal from office has never happened, and with a Republican-controlled Senate, it's highly unlikely to with Donald Trump. But there's plenty of damage to be done.
It's not one smoking gun. You got 20 smoking guns. This is smoking artillery that's going on right now. Believe me, this is a fight to the death. Both sides will be dug in, completely polarized. It's going to be a very ugly election season, but it's going to be about this.
For the Democrats, it is a huge risk, but however slim the odds of success, enough of them now believe they have no choice but to try.
Siobhan Kennedy there. Well, earlier I spoke to the Democratic Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib, who's been the target of President Trump's criticism. I started by asking her why the Democrats who have held off before think now is a good time to start an impeachment inquiry.
Well, I think many of my colleagues, they weren't trying to impeach him. They were trying to hold him accountable, trying to get his administration to comply with congressional subpoenas. Many of us, including myself from day one, have been concerned about him violating the United States Constitution that requires sitting presidents that take the oath of office to divest in their businesses so that we can take out any kind of, pay-to-play activity that corrupts our democracy out of play when he makes decisions that should be on behalf of the American people, not behalf of the best interest of his companies. Now is this fear that we have allowed him to continue to be so lawless that he actually committed extortion and asked the country Ukraine to help him in a personal matter that, to me, I think very much puts our national security at stake.
There's no evidence in the notes which have been released of the president offering any sort of quid pro quo to his Ukrainian counterpart.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know if you're, where I grew up, it sounded very much like a mob scene. Congratulations, I want to help you, but you got to help me. I have a favor. I'm going to have my personal lawyer call you. Oh, I'm so glad that my personal lawyer contacted your assistant already. And, you know, hey, by the way, I'm really disappointed that they weren't able to prosecute, you know, I think Vice President Biden's son. I mean, there's a lot of, to me, collusion there. There's a lot of cover up there. You know, for sure, we all know that this was just a summary. This was not a complete transcript.
You all know it's a very long stretch, isn't it, from your analysis of this being a recreation of some sort of mob scene and being able to impeach the President of the United States of America. This is a very risky strategy for the Democrats, isn't it?
Oh, I don't know. So for me, it's not a strategy. I'm an American that has seen this president violate the United States Constitution by taking money and allowing military planes to land near an airport so that his hotels can profit off of it. So for you all, it might be this phone call. For many of us in the United States Congress, it's been a number of issues. The fact that we've held 3 members of his cabinet in contempt, the fact that he has continued to not divest, although 44 presidents before him divested in all of their businesses, including President Carter selling his farm before he took the oath of office. You understand we have a crooked CEO running the United States government.
There were a swirl of allegations, similar criticisms made of President Trump around the very lengthy Mueller inquiry. In his view, he walked away unscathed from that. There is a danger he will do the same with this, and that is very damaging for you and the Democrats, isn't it?
This is not about political strategy and risk. You know what the risk for me and my residents who have been at the forefront in saying we need to impeach this president because he is not above the law is the fact that we're going to look away. That is, to me, more risky and dangerous if we're looking away and not allowing a sitting CEO run the government of the United States.
You say this is about your country. You will also be aware there will be many people who say this is a personal vendetta. You've made it clear since you first became elected you're going nowhere until you impeach President
But the facts, of course, Jackie. I mean, there are so many layers here that I think people around the world don't understand, but maybe they've already seen it. I mean, people know there's an upgraded version of pay to play right now, that if you want anything from Donald J. Trump, then go stay at his hotel, spend money at his resorts. The fact that he's even having military planes land near an airport so that his failed business is able to make some sort of profit on a taxpayer dollars, that alone is an impeachable offense.
President Trump,
is,
of course,
probably the most corrupt president that we've ever had in the history of the United States. And this is just what we know publicly.
Very briefly, there are Democratic strategists who say this is playing entirely into the hands of President Trump.
I am a public servant. I'm not a political strategist, nor do I want to sit there and put my party before my country. Nor do I want to say that this is somehow not abided by the polls. If I listened to polls, Jackie, I would have never ran for the United States Congress because people said I couldn't win, and I did. So I'm going to outwork the hate. I'm going to push back against false lies and theories and push the truth.
Rashida Tlaib, thank you so much for talking to us today.
Now, you could be forgiven for thinking that political times in this country were extraordinary, but the US is also going through its own political convulsions, where President Trump's Democrat opponents believe they have enough ammunition today to try to drive him out of office. In any other age, this story would take up half this program, at least, were it not for Brexit. The latest development in the US came from the transcript of a conversation Mr. Trump had with Ukraine's president, in which he asked for help digging up dirt on the son of Joe Biden, who is a potential challenger to him in next year's presidential election. In the past hour, Mr. Trump said the allegations were all a big hoax.
Tonight, Donald Trump emerged before the cameras, attempting to dampen down the greatest firestorm of his presidency, mocking Democrats as they accelerate their efforts to impeach him.
It's all a hoax, folks. It's all a big hoax. It's very sad what the Democrats are doing to this country. They're dividing, they're belittling, they're demeaning our country. So many leaders came up to me today and they said, "Sir, what you go through, no president has ever gone through. And it's so bad for your country."
Thank you very much, Mr. President.
In a twist of fate, President Trump and his Ukrainian counterpart met in New York today. It was their phone conversation in July that has triggered this impeachment maelstrom. During that July call, Trump appealed for political dirt on Joe Biden and his son, even if Zelensky was today claiming he hadn't felt pressure to act.
Nobody pushed me, yes.
In other words, no pressure.
But the transcript of that phone call to President Zelensky, released today, reveals what Democrats are describing as a mafia-style exchange. During that fateful call, Trump told the Ukrainian president, "The United States has been very, very good to Ukraine. I would like you to do us a favor. There is a lot of talk about Biden's son. Biden went around bragging that he stopped the prosecution. So if you can look into it." Zelensky replied, "The next prosecutor general will be 100% my person. He or she will look into the situation. We will work on the investigation of the case." That, for Democrats, is the green light for impeachment.
Full speed ahead.
A US president caught asking a foreign leader to pursue an investigation against a political rival. Many also suspect that a $400 million arms deal to Ukraine was being linked to whether Zelensky followed through on Trump's request.
No one should have any illusions about the seriousness of what is already uncontested, and that is the President of the United States has betrayed his oath of office and sacrificed our national security in doing so.
So, Senator, what was your reaction when you read the transcript?
A total abuse of power. You have the President of the United States using the power and the prestige of the office of the presidency to ask a foreign leader to interfere in an American election and to harm one of his political opponents.
But key Republicans are circling their wagons around the Trump White House.
This phone call is not an impeachable offense, and if it becomes an impeachable offense, God help the next president and the ones beyond.
Help us impeach this president!
The Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, is now taking the greatest risk that exists in the American political playbook, impeaching a president, trying to ensure that Trump becomes only the fourth US president to face such a humiliation. The distribution of power here on Capitol Hill is simple. Democrats control the House, meaning that impeachment proceedings are almost certain to begin. But Republicans control the Senate. That is where a trial of Donald Trump would take place. And that means his conviction and his removal from office is unlikely. The president is certain to see this as the fight of his life. And this nation is braced now for a political showdown of an intensity not witnessed for decades. Robert Moore, News at 10, Washington.